Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. Moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are. Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Bill Sperlazza. He's an attorney with over 17 years experience and a basketball coach to boot. He's talking to me right now from a campaign stop. He had to do this, so he's making time to do this in spite of his busy schedule. Welcome to the show, Bill.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. Can you please tell us more about yourself apart from being a basketball coach and being an attorney? Tell us more
Yeah,
about Bill.
yeah. Well, I grew up on the north side of Youngstown, Ohio, which is in northeast Ohio, between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I came to Columbus in 2003 to go to law school at Ohio State University, and I've lived here ever since. I'm married. My wife, Abby, is also an attorney, and we have three children. Autumn is 8 years old. Nora is 6 years old. And my son, Willie, is 16 months old. So he's just a little guy. And I took him with me yesterday to early vote to vote for his dad. So he got to vote for the first time in a general election. So when I was in law school, I got hired by then city attorney Richard C. Pfeiffer Jr. To work in the Columbus City Attorney's Office. And I've been there ever since. But I've done a lot of different things in my 17 years at the city attorney's office. I started out in our prosecutors division, where we would handle anywhere between 30 and 100 cases a day and carry, between 350 and 400 cases total on our docket. So it was very busy, but it was a great place to learn and get a lot of practical courtroom experience. I then transitioned to our environmental court team, where primarily what I did is shut down some of the worst hotels, bars, carryouts, and drug houses in Franklin County. What we're most proud of is shutting down about 10 or 11 of the worst hotels up on Morse Road and 161, where crime, prostitution, felony acts of violence, and drug dealing were happening on a regular basis. We were able to significantly reduce crime in those neighborhoods based on these civil cases I was filing on behalf of the city. In fact, we reduced crime by 52.5% in the areas that we shut these hotels down. Now I'm in our civil litigation division. So the city of Columbus, just like any other entity, gets sued, and I represent the city in these civil disputes. So I've practiced criminal law, I've practiced civil law and administrative law. I've been a prosecutor and I've been a plaintiff, and now I'm a defense attorney. So I've practiced quite a bit of different law, and I've been on both sides of the V, as I like to say. And I hope that that experience will serve me well if I'm fortunate enough and honored enough to sit on the bench.
Wow, you have been running for office while you have a little baby at home.
Yeah,
What has it been like for Amy, Autumn, and Nora and Will
yeah.
with dad
It's
running for office?
yeah. Certainly, my wife Abby is the hero of this scenario. Plus, we have great grandparents that do it, that love their grandchildren and help us out a lot. But to be honest with you, I miss them. I mean, tonight's a night where, I was at early vote all day, working the early vote center for the first half of the day, and then I went to my office and worked for the second half of the day. And I come home, I wash my face, put on a new suit, and come to this event and come online with you. So we're less than 2 weeks away from election day, and now's not the time to take days off or take evenings off. And frankly, my whole life has been, in my mind, there is no day to take off work. You always put your suit on or put your uniform on or put whatever it is on and get to work. So it's busy. It can be hard sometimes. I miss my kids. I miss seeing them. But I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're just days away from getting this campaign finished and getting back to something a little closer to normal life.
There's life there's light at the end of the tunnel. Can
Yeah.
you tell us about growing up in Mahoney Valley?
Yeah. So I grew up on the north side of Youngstown, a little town called Girard. So it's just on the Mahoning River, just like Youngstown is, where all the steel mills are. And it was a great place to be from. It's a great place to grow up. But growing up, I had very little concept of the idea of being a lawyer. I often tell people that if you would have knocked on my door when I was 16 years old and said, "You're going to be a lawyer, you're going to live in Columbus, and you're going to run for judge," I would have said, "Man, I think you got the wrong door. You're at the wrong street." It was a unique upbringing, a tough upbringing, but I had fantastic parents and fantastic friends. And we obviously didn't grow up rich by any means, but we when you're living in Youngstown, we were all the same, so we never felt like we wanted for anything. But it's a whole different world here in Columbus, and but growing up in Youngstown taught me a lot. It taught me to be tough. It taught me to be thankful for everything you have, be it big or small. And it taught me that, the people I grew up around, and the moms and dads of my friends, and my dad as well, and my grandparents, I mean, they got up and went to work, and a lot of those jobs weren't pleasant. Amanda, you and I get to put a nice suit on and go to our courtroom or go to our office and go to work. Those folks put their work clothes on and took their lunch pail to coal mines and steel mills and car manufacturing plants, and had tough jobs. So any day that I feel a little bit tired or a little bit worn out, I definitely lean on my Youngstown upbringing to get your butt up and put your suit on and get to work.
Get to work. Yeah,
Get
and
to work.
talking about working, your family came from West Virginia.
Yes.
Your grandfather, one of them worked in the coal mines, one of
hmm
them worked in the steel mines.
hmm
How did that shape you to become the man you are?
Yeah. So, both of my grandfathers were important, as in my upbringing, certainly along with my dad. And, you know, I really think, and I remember watching my grandfather go to bed, at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I would ask my grandma, why is he going to bed? Why isn't he playing with us? I was 6 or 7 years old at the time. And, that's when I learned what third shift meant, what night shift meant, because he was going to work all night in a tough place, in a steel mill, actually a coke plant at Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel down in West Virginia. So a tough place to work. And, it taught me, look, work is tough, but tough men go to bed, get their sleep, get up and grab their lunch pail and their helmet and go to work. My grandfather on my father's side was the same way. Even for years and years, even after he retired, he would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning because he was used to it, because that's what time he went to work. And again, these weren't pretty jobs where you sit in an office. These were tough jobs where you get muddy and dirty and cold, or in the winter and hot in the summer. And so just having that background and having that family in my life and my friends in my life from Youngstown, any day that anybody thinks being an attorney or running for office is hard, it just doesn't, it's not that in my mind. It's just get up and go to work. If you got to work 8 hours today, that's great. If you've got to work 18 hours today, that's great. You're not in the coal mines. You're not in the steel mill. Put your hard hat on and go to work.
Tough men get up and go
Mm-hmm.
to work.
Yeah.
That's the mantra. Your
Mm-hmm.
father also worked at Youngstown State University for
Yeah.
over 30 years.
Yeah. So
Was he working? Yes.
the reason I'm from Youngstown is because my dad was a really good football player, and he got a scholarship to play football at Youngstown State University. So he moved from West Virginia up to Youngstown, and he played football there for 4 years and had a really good career. But he got a job working at Youngstown State University when he was a senior in college, and he worked there his entire career. He was a building manager and ran the student union there for many years, and then he was the director of like the dormitories and the commissary student life. And now, of course, my mother and my father met when they were in high school, when they were 16 years old. So she moved up to be with him in Youngstown, and that's why I'm from Youngstown, and that's why it's such an important part of my life, and why I was fortunate enough to go to Youngstown State University when I was a kid and get my college education that led me to going to law school at Ohio State. I'm very thankful for what Youngstown State University did for my family, my dad, my mom, and me.
Wow. So were you a student at the time that your father was working there?
I was, and
Wow.
you know, uh, he was a bit of a very well known guy and a bit of a legend there, and we have the same name. He's Bill Sperlazza, and I'm Bill Sperlazza. So it was fun to be there with him and live up to to the legacy that he built at that university. I knew I had a lot to live up to and a lot of hard work to get there. So I hope and I think I did them all proud.
I'm sure they are proud of you.
Yeah.
And your mom, ended up going back to school and she
Hmm.
became a teacher.
Yeah.
What was it like for you being the son of an elementary school teacher?
Yeah. So yeah, my mom stayed home and raised me until I was, school age, and then she was able to go back to Youngstown State University a little bit later in life and got her degree uh, uh, in I think primary education. She was a preschool teacher. So first and foremost, I think even before she went to school, when I was a very young kid, I was very fortunate to have somebody who at the very least at that point was a teacher at heart and was about to be a preschool teacher to educate me before I ever got to go to school. So, I always am very thankful of the work my mom put in with me when I was a little kid, working with reading and counting and things of those nature. So when I got to school, I had an advantage. I had a leg up. But I think one of the biggest memories I have of my mother being a preschool teacher, she taught at a place called Easter Seals in Youngstown, and I would go visit from time to time as I got a little older, or if I could start driving, I would go visit, and it was a different perspective, and it was very important in my life. I'm not ashamed to tell you, I'm not afraid to tell you, I mean to say that when I walked into my mother's classroom, me and my mother were the only two white people in the building. Okay, and it was an important part of my life to be around those families and be around those kids and see the work that my mom would do with those young people. It certainly was an important part of molding who I became as a politician, socially, as a person. To just remember that it's not always you can't always worry about the people that are in your immediate neighborhood or on your block. There's other folks out there, and you got to go and be out there with them and meet them and work with them and talk to them and be friends with them and do business with them. That's how you learn about different people, different communities, different cultures, and we should celebrate that and enjoy it and not run from it.
Thank you. And when and how did you discover your love for the game of basketball?
So I was a young kid, and I started relatively late in sixth grade, which sounds early, but in sports terms, that's pretty late. And I was very young, and probably didn't have a lot of confidence or a lot of faith or belief in myself at the time. and I started to play basketball, and I was lucky to, have some ability at it, and be pretty decent at it. And it made me feel like, in many respects, to say it saved me is an overstatement, but it certainly helped me develop the drive to be as good as I can at something. I can very vividly remember, not being great at shooting foul shots, free throws. And then I remember being in the gym and shooting, 20 or 30 more after practice, and 20 or 30, 40 after the next practice, and doing that. And then I became good at shooting free throws. And I know that sounds silly, but what I learned is, hey, it turns out if you work at something, you can get better at it. and we laugh at that now because we all know that. But when you're a fifth grader, sixth grader, so I didn't realize that. And so basketball helped me have confidence, believe in myself, gave me a purpose to work hard, but more importantly, taught me that if you work hard at something, you can improve, you can get better, no matter what it is, be it sports or school or anything else.
It taught you discipline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
And when did you discover that you wanted to become a lawyer?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because, it has something to do with basketball. First, I will tell you that my father did have a friend named Pat Fire, who was an attorney in the Youngstown area. And I always looked up to him. He was somebody that I admired. And so he started my interest in thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, because very simply, Emmanuel, anytime somebody in our life got in trouble, anytime they needed help, we'd say, call Pat. He's our lawyer. Call Pat. Let's see. And, maybe when I was at about high school, I said to myself, when people are in trouble, I want them to call me for help. We call Pat. He's an attorney. Someday when I'm old, I want to be the person we call when everybody needs help. So maybe that's what I need to do. But the truth is, once I went to college, at Youngstown State University, and I was trying to play on the basketball team there. I was, with the team, working out and doing all the preseason stuff that you do and practices and stuff. And I didn't think much about school. I mean, I was always okay at it because what my mother taught me when I was young, she gave me that leg up. But basketball was always probably first in my mind, to be honest with you. But I had a very bad knee injury. I had a complete tear of the ACL in my right knee. And, nowadays that's 3 to 6 months. But back then it was sort of a 6, 9, 12-month thing that, wasn't easy to bounce back from. So long story short, my knee did not recover well. And I realized my basketball career was probably near the end. And at about the same time, I got my first report card from Youngstown State University, my college courses. And I had 4 courses and I got 4 A's. And it was just almost at the same time, Emmanuel, where I felt like this knee is not getting better. And I opened that envelope and got A's in all my courses. And I said, you know what? Maybe if I put this basketball away for now and I focus on these studies as hard as I can, maybe I can get to law school. Maybe I can be an attorney. Maybe I could be the person that folks call when they need help.
Oh, interesting. You tore your ACL and you got all A's. And here you are becoming an attorney, still all A's.
I've never thought of it that way.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Did you play basketball in high school? And if you did,
I did.
What was it like?
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, it was great. I coming from a smaller town like I did, and coming from a tough, tight-knit neighborhood, to this day, people that I played basketball with when I was a 6th, 7th, 8th grader, all through high school, are some of my best friends. To this day, I was just with them 3 weeks ago. All right. I'm going to be 43 in November. And we're talking about folks that I played basketball with when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. So it was an awesome way. Again, all the things I told you about, learning hard work and discipline and all those things, but creating a sense of community and friendship and brotherhood that lasts for the rest of my life up to this moment. But I think what it also did is it gave me the first opportunity or the first chance to practice or exhibit leadership. I was, fair to say one of the better players on just about every team I played on. And with that comes in my mind some responsibility to lead. And people do it in different ways. Some are quiet leaders who do it by example. Some are vocal leaders. I tried to be both. And I was a kid, so I don't know how great I did, but it certainly was the first time in my mind that I looked in the mirror and said, people on this team are depending on you. Your coaches are depending on you. You need to do the right thing every day, work hard every day, and be a good example to everybody around you, and take the mantle of leadership, and don't be afraid to be a leader vocally, on the court, off the court. And, it's a silly high school basketball team in one part of the country. But it was it's such an important place to learn how to be a teammate and learn how to care about other people and learn how to take on the responsibility of leadership. And, without that, I would not be where I am today. I don't know where I'd be, but I would not be where I am today without those lessons and that sort of petri dish, that place where I got to experiment with these concepts that are so important now, not only in my work, but particularly in my political career.
Wow, it gave you that sense of leadership and
Yeah.
helped you to find yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How did you
Absolutely.
feel having to jettison the dream of becoming a professional basketball player?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say I ever dreamt of being a professional basketball player, because I probably knew I wasn't good enough for that level. But I was absolutely good enough to have a good college career somewhere, and enjoy that. And it hurt badly. I'll tell you another thing basketball taught me. For having a very good life like I've had a couple of traumatic moments in my life. And perhaps that was the first one. And, uh, I think that having that traumatic moment, the traumatic injury and certainly in my mind stopped me from playing. It taught me to deal with adversity. It taught me that if you're going to write your life's plan out, you better write it in pencil and not pen, because the important thing is to be able to adjust and to pivot at what life throws you, and not to have a nice, neat plan and expect for you to hit every check mark on your plan as it goes down. And that was just the first of a handful of sort of traumatic experiences, if you will, that I had to navigate as a very young person. And, it was really, really hard at the time. It definitely affected me mentally, psychologically. But looking back on it, we understand as adults that life is full of pain and tough times and traumatic experiences. And you can't, hide under your bed until it all goes away. You've got to get up, put your suit on, and go to work. Get up, go to the classroom and take good notes and study. You got to get up and do the next thing. So that was a big, big lesson in my life, and something that I think definitely helped me get through some tough times as I grew up and as in my adult life.
Oh, you just said something profound. You said, write your life plan out in pencil and
Yeah,
not in pens, because
yeah,
life could throw you some curveballs. You have to
hmm
be willing to adapt to the
yeah,
reality of the time.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's something,
profound.
coaching kids. It's something I talk to kids about all the time. I appreciate your dreams, and I want you to work as hard as you can to get there, and I'll help you. But the best attribute I can give you is a sense or an ability to pivot, to adjust, because things aren't always going to go the way you want them to. And you've got to be able to work through those issues and still chase your dream.
You have to be adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
How did you land your first job as a basketball coach?
So, about that moment where I realized that my knee wasn't going to get right anytime soon, and at the same time, I opened that report card up, um, realizing, hey, I could be a better student than I have been. Maybe I can go to law school. Uh, about the same time, I decided to give up playing. A coach, an old coach of mine, heard I wasn't going to play again, and we connected. And he gave me my first job coaching junior high boys basketball. So this is like 7th, 8th graders, and um, it was my first job coaching. So that would have been my second year of college, I believe. So I think what's really funny about it is at the time that I started coaching, I'm coaching a team of maybe like 13, 14-year-olds or 12, 13-year-old, and I was 18, so, it wasn't like I was a grown man at the time, and we were only a few years away. And, in the real world and the adult world, if you're 5 or 6 years older than somebody, you're the same age, right? But at the time, it was, I can remember it, man. I can remember the first time I had my first team, and it was tryouts, and there's a gymnasium, and there's maybe 30 boys in there that are 12, 13 years old. And I have a rack of basketballs. I've got a whistle, right? And that's it. I'm the only adult in the room. There's 2 hours of practice, and I've got it all planned every minute because that's how I am. But it dawned on me, like, I am in charge of these kids. I am in charge of this team at not only what we do, but the attitude that we have when we do it, the tone of everything that we do and say. And it was the responsibility hit me well after I took the job. I can see it now. I can remember where I was. I can almost remember what I was wearing when I said, holy cow, I'm in charge of this room of 30 crazy 13-year-old boys. And I ended up doing it my entire college career rather than playing while I was going to school and while I was working a campus job at the university. I coached basketball, boys basketball. And it, again, you want to talk about your next step in learning how to become a leader, learning how to be the person that sets the tone in an office or in any space or any workforce. Those are the moments kind of like, where I really, really learned what it means to lead. I mean, you can lead people on a basketball court, but then you go home, but with a basketball team, from beginning to end, you're in charge of every person there. And it taught me a lot and really helped me mature and grow up in a unique and fun way.
You were a kid also, even at 18, trying to find yourself.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
did it feel like having this bunch of teenagers depend
Mhm.
on you and see you as that adult in the room?
Yeah. Well, there was a moment that it was scary, but that's another lesson in life is that, there are going to be lots of times in your life where you're scared or where you're nervous. I mean, I bet Emmanuel, you and I both, maybe the first couple trials we ever had, heck, maybe every trial we've ever had, you get up in the morning of trial and you could feel the butterflies in your stomach, right? It definitely taught me that, that you need to work through any nervousness, any doubts you might have, right? So that was important to me, working with those young kids. But it definitely shaped my life in a big way. And it was very important to me to be able to be the leader those kids needed. And it went, to be frank, it went well. I mean, I had 4 great years there. I started coaching 7th graders who would be, I think, 12, 13 years old. And by the end of my time, I was the varsity assistant coach. So I was the head coach, and then I was just the second in command, so to speak, of the varsity team. So I worked my way up, and had a great time there. And again, another moment in life where I learned, hey, sometimes you start at the bottom and you got to work and work and work to get yourself up to a next level. And, I think it's nice that I got to do that, in the low stakes world of coaching high school boys basketball and not learning that when you're thrown into your profession when, after school.
You learned how to work your way up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Can you tell us about those other jobs you held while in college?
Yeah. Nothing overly interesting. I was that we had a computer lab at school. So for any young kids that are watching that want to laugh at us, we didn't all own computers when I went to college. In fact, none of us did, to my recollection. So we had a large room full of computers, maybe 20 or 30 of them. And it was a computer lab where students would come and sit down and write their papers or write their essays or anything on the computer and save it on a little disk, maybe print it and go. So not the most glamorous job. It was just a way to make money, to be able to have spending money in my pocket. But honestly, it's not a great profound thing. the best thing that job did for me is teach me a lot about technology and how to use computers. Because again, the young people, you got to understand, in 1998, 1999, we all weren't computer experts. So it helped me do a lot better with technology than I would have had I not had that job for 4 years.
Thank you. What was your coaching philosophy?
Wow, that's a great question. So, what's interesting is I started coaching boys in Youngstown, which is what I just described to you. And then I came to Columbus and I went to school and I, got my career up and running. And I came back to coaching here in Columbus, and I coached girls basketball for 5 years here in Columbus at Lyndon McKinley High School and Bishop Hartley High School and Thomas Worthington High School. And it's funny because the philosophies were different. When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, still learning, my philosophy was probably a little more basketball oriented, more aggressive, and more about winning and succeeding. But certainly once I got a little older and I got into the real world, so to speak, more, and I came to Columbus and sort of had my second basketball coaching career, particularly with coaching young ladies, particularly where I started at Lyndon McKinley, it became a lot more about creating relationships with kids. So to answer your question, philosophy wise, to create relationships with our kids, to make sure they knew that they had people that cared about them, that are here to work with them and make them and get them to as much success as we can possibly get them to try to really build a community, a team, a tight-knit group that cared about each other. And, typically when you do that, the basketball takes care of itself, right? So that was my philosophy. But also, I will say, and I would admit to this, I'm kind of an organization and preparedness freak, if you will. So being on time, organized, prepared, every practice I've ever run in my life, I can promise you this, every single minute was on a calendar, a schedule in my hand that day, telling us what we were going to do and why we were going to do it. So, I know it's a silly thing, but certainly when I started, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I did it that way. And I do it to this day. It teaches you about being prepared, being on time, having a plan, executing the plan within a group of people that you care about, that you're working for, and a coach that cares about you and is willing to sit down and talk to you about anything, basketball or otherwise.
Always have a plan. Wow.
Always.
What are those skills you learned as a coach that are applicable to your practice as a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, certainly negotiating disputes, okay, be that between teammates, be that with parents who perhaps aren't happy about their kids' playing time or whatever it might be. That is big. But also, again, like I mentioned, the attention to detail. The thing about kids, if anybody's thinking about coaching or getting in this world, is if they think for a second you don't have a plan, if they think for a second that you don't know what you're doing, if they think for a second that you are making stuff up on the fly, okay, maybe it's a punishment for doing a particular thing wrong, like missing a class or something. If they think you're making this stuff up off the top of your head, you will lose them like that. You will lose them like that. So you've got to demonstrate, certainly to kids nowadays, that you have a plan, you know what you're doing, you are prepared, you can answer all their questions, and they know, hey, if you miss a class or if you then you have a punishment. Maybe you miss a game. And if they miss a class and you tell them they're missing a game, they say, yep, I'm sorry, you're right, coach. If you don't have a plan for a particular course of poor action and you make up a punishment off the top of your head, you'll lose them quick. So, and I think that's applicable. And you know this too, when we are trying a case or when you're litigating, you better know everything that's going on, what the lawsuit's about, why the law is what it is, how it's applicable. And on the fly in the courtroom, you better have a plan for any eventuality. Because if you don't, then you could lose that jury or you could lose that judge just like that.
If you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. You've got to be prepared. Yeah. And you went to the Ohio State University for law school. What was the law school like for you?
I loved law school. I went to college near my home, so I really didn't have that going to college experience, if you will. So it was certainly my first time away from home, and the biggest thing I remember about law school, I made a ton of great friends that are, again, are still friends to this day. Um, but for me, it was the first time, I was a small or medium, maybe, fish in a big pond. I got 3 or 4 B's in college. Okay. I got almost all A's in college. No, I went to Youngstown State. I didn't go to Harvard, but I didn't see too many B's in my life, 2 or 3. Okay. And then you go to law school, and you're at Ohio State University, and you're sitting next to people that went to, Brown or Cornell or Tufts or, all of these schools that are far superior to the one that I went to for university, for college. And it's an uphill swim every day, so in many respects, the competitiveness that I had playing basketball, growing up playing basketball, working out, training my body to get it to be good enough to play, you have to transfer that over into the classroom. And especially, in law school with these great students, I felt like if I didn't get up and work every single day, I wasn't going to survive here. Okay. Because there were some really, and some of these folks were my best friends to this day. But I can tell you right now, my roommate in law school, who's still a dear friend, such a smart guy. He went to Notre Dame for college, and we would sit down and do the same reading assignments, and he would be done in a half an hour, and he had it all here, and I had to read it twice and take notes on it and review my notes so that if I got called on in class, I could give a competent answer. And that was one of those times where I said, Bill, you've had a lot of moments in your life where you were maybe physically bigger or stronger or more talented than folks you were competing against. Well, today you're competing against people academically that have bigger, stronger, better brains than you. So you better double your work effort if you want to survive in this world.
You've always been the physical giant in the room until law school. Then you met other intellectual
Yeah.
giants
Yeah.
and you had to fit in.
Yeah. And they
Wow.
helped me how to fine tune my academic career. I had a good academic career in college, but these guys helped me and motivated me to fine tune my academics.
They sharpened you. You needed
Mm-hmm.
that competition.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you were fortunate enough to travel to England, to
Yeah.
Oxford University
Yeah.
for travel abroad, as a study
Yeah.
abroad.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that trip and what you learned on that trip?
A monumental moment in my life. I spent 2 months in Europe, traveling and studying. And, I recommend it to any young person. I think traveling and immersing yourself in other cultures, it's one of the most important things we can do in our society. It really is, because they often say, I hope I'm not butchering this phrase, that travel is the biggest enemy of racism or of ignorance. You know, uh, it was an eye-opening experience to me to go to Spain and go to Italy and go to England and immerse yourself in the cultures of these other folks and learn, hey, not everybody lives like you did on the block in Youngstown, right? And 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 as I always say, to enjoy and celebrate these different cultures and love them and appreciate all the cool things. You and I grew up differently, and I, I don't want to mimic you, and I don't want you to try to be like me. I want to learn as much as I can about who you are and how you grew up and what your culture was like, and love it and appreciate it and maybe experience some of it if I could. And obviously you feel the same way, because you have this show and you're digging into people's lives that grew up in very different circumstances than you did. So I think it's an awesome experience. It very well might have been the most important experience in my law school career. Um, and it definitely changed my worldview. And I always loved everybody no matter what, but I think I gained a greater appreciation of where other cultures came from or originated, at least European cultures, and fell in love with the concept of learning about cultures, immersing myself in them, and having a tremendous amount of respect and admiration and curiosity about, everybody I meet that doesn't look exactly like me or who didn't grow up exactly like me.
It gave you cultural curiosity.
Yeah. Cultural curiosity is a good way to put it.
Hmm. Wow. Tell us about your first job as a lawyer.
Yeah. So I started in the city attorney's office's prosecutors division, which is something common, where young lawyers will start in the prosecutors division here in the city attorney's office. And the best thing about it is, we did have wonderful older attorneys who took us under our wing and trained us. We go to college and we go to law school, but I try to tell folks, you've got to understand 99% of my legal education came in the courtroom being trained by other lawyers. And I think a lot of people feel the same way in that regard. So it was a tremendous time of learning for me. And the best thing about it is, a lot of times you go to big firms and you might not try a case for a year or two. You might not do a deposition for a year or two. Look, these weren't the case of the year. They weren't huge cases, but they hand you the file and say, trial's tomorrow, and you're in charge. So a great place to learn, a great place to sort of experiment, learn who you are as an attorney or who you want to be as an attorney. And a lot of great experience. Look, we carried 350, 400 cases, active cases at any one time. And like I said, they weren't all case of the year. Don't get me wrong. A lot of speeding tickets in there. I get it. But that's how you learn, there's nothing that'll calm your nerves for the rest of your life in a trial when, you're starting a jury trial, picking a jury. And at the same time, you're reading the police report for the first time. Sometimes you just got to dive into the pool and go. And that's what it taught me.
Each case was unique and important, and you've got to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you one other thing it taught me that we talk a lot about what I talk to kids that I coach about, putting your life's plan in pencil, not pen, being it, things like that. One thing, I'll tell you something that taught me, you'll like this. You better start being comfortable with being uncomfortable. You better get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay? Because you can't, as hard as we prepare and to every minute and every detail, like I told you before, in life, when the game is on, when the action's on, things are going to come up that you might not be prepared for completely, and if some people get buried in the details. Some people get buried in needing to be completely prepared for everything. And you should strive to do that. But understand that sometimes something's going to hit and it might not fit the model that you had planned for this case or this game or this life. Don't let being uncomfortable make you hide under the bed. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, man, because it's going to happen a lot, especially in a courtroom and a lot in life.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's a lesson for life, whether on the basketball court or in the courtroom. You're always in one court or the other.
Yeah.
Okay. And as an attorney, have you had any case that stands out that you will never forget?
Sure. Well, I had the biggest cases, the most important cases in my career, and I mentioned them, but I didn't speak too specifically about them, was when I was a plaintiff's attorney filing civil nuisance abatement cases in environmental court. And I know that's a lot of legalese, but in a nutshell, we learned about 10 years ago that we had some real hotel problems up on the north side, where some hotels were acquiescing, allowing, if not profiting and being involved in some serious criminal activity that was occurring on hotel grounds. That's drug dealing, prostitution, and those are two things that tend to lead to felony acts of violence and other violence. So, I sat down with some really smart people. We had an awesome attorney I worked with who's now a judge named Jiza Page. We did, I believe, certainly the first hotel case in a long time, where we filed these cases against these hotel owners and operators saying, you've got to stop this. You're part of this. Even if you're just turning a blind eye to it, you are creating a criminal element in these neighborhoods. Emmanuel, just like you and I put our suit and tie on and go to our office to work, These bad guys were getting up, going to these hotels, giving them $30 cash, and that was their office for the day. And maybe the hotel owners and operators were cool with it, but the neighborhood wasn't. The businesses around it weren't. So, I'll try to put it succinctly. We shut these hotels down. We kicked these bad guys out. Some of the hotels we were able to either repurpose or get them to be hotels that followed the rules and ran a better business. And so here's what I'm most proud of to answer your question. About 5 years later, we get a call from 10 TV News. And they said, hey, we've been following all these hotel cases. They were all on the news every time we shut a hotel down. And we'd like to know if crime has been affected in the areas. Is it, we'd like to see some statistics. And I remember being on that phone in my office saying, okay, well, I'll make some calls and I'll get back to you. And I hang up the phone and I said, boy, I hope it got better. I hope it didn't get worse. I mean, I'd be embarrassed. This is my life's work to this point. So I didn't know what was going to happen, but we partnered with the police department. They have an amazing criminal statistics group that can narrow things down to, 1,000-yard radius of each hotel. And we did a study on it. We looked at how many calls for service, which would mean how many times a police car was called for to these neighborhoods and how many crimes were reported, police reports, arrests, things of that nature. We looked at it in these areas before we shut down the hotels. And then we looked at it currently while the hotels were either shut down or operating under agreements to be safer, have more lighting, have security, things like that. And I remember putting all this in and thinking, this report's going to come tomorrow and the next day, God, I hope it's good. I hope we reduce crime by 10%. I hope we reduced it at all. And they've sent those reports back to us, and it showed a 52.5% reduction in crime in those neighborhoods. 52.5%. I'd have been happy with 5. And, the boots on the ground, the business owners, the homeowners, they told us, oh, it's great. Things are going great. The police officers who patrol those areas said, Bill, it's going great. Thank you. Thank you. But to see those statistics bear out, corroborate what everybody on the ground level was saying, I mean, I'm getting chills about it right now. Like, we did work that mattered. We did work that helped people. We did work that helped folks live in their homes and work in their businesses and feel safer and feel better. So that's what I'm most proud of. And to be frank, Emmanuel, those cases are what started my political career, because they were often cases that were very newsworthy, that were reported on heavily, and where other city officials, council people, mayors, representatives, senators started becoming interested in what we were doing. I started traveling around Franklin County and around Ohio, talking to other police departments and political leaders and prosecutors and attorneys about how they too can use these methods to maybe clean up some crime in their neighborhoods. And that's really what started my road to thinking, hey, maybe I could run for office someday. Maybe I could run for judge someday.
Was that what inspired you to run for judge in 2019?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think, certainly, the environmental court, which is where I ran the first time. I ran in 2019, as you mentioned. I lost by 3%, very close race. I think it's one of the most important courtrooms, in our county, because of the work we do that I described. And very similar to the way that as a very, very young kid, it became apparent to me somehow that if you are the best player on your team, you have a responsibility to be a leader, whether it be vocally or by how you operate. I had a calling in my mind that, we had a very good judge there named Dan Hawkins who did a great job. He was a great judge and he was moving on. And I just felt the same feeling, is I've got a responsibility to make sure this court continues to go in the right direction, that we continue to help people in the way I've described to you. And it was absolutely a calling, a feeling that this is what I needed to do. Did I want to do it? Yes. But I felt more like I needed to do it than anything else.
Thank you. What are those things you learned from that campaign in 2019
Yeah.
that those lessons you learned from that campaign that you are now
Hmm.
attaching to this campaign to make
Yeah.
sure that you don't make the same errors, to show
Hmm.
that you have grown and that you're not the same candidate that
Yeah.
ran in 2019?
I sometimes, as I run this campaign now in 2022, I'm very proud of the campaign we ran in 2019. We ran an excellent campaign. We got every single endorsement that was given in our race. I think there was maybe around 19 or 20 endorsements. We got every one of them. Police, fire, labor unions, teachers, you name it. We ran a really good campaign and we thought we were going to win. The first lesson I've learned is you need to wake up every day like you better campaign as hard as you can, like your life depends on it. In 2019, I believed I was going to win because I did everything that I could possibly do. I thought if I just executed the game plan, if I did everything that was asked of me, and I never missed a day, and I never missed a minute, and I never missed a meeting, and I never missed anything, I thought you just work hard, you do the right thing, you never take a minute off, and you're going to win because you've earned it. And then I didn't. Another one of those pivots, another one of those better write it in pencil, not pen, right? So the biggest difference between that campaign and this campaign is I don't feel that way. And I hesitate to use the word entitled because I don't think that saying if I work as hard as humanly possible, I'll win is an entitlement. It's just really more of a mistake. It's really, I thought that was the truth. And the truth is, you better wake up scared every day. And let me tell you, I believe in my heart, the greatest motivator in life isn't money, it's fear. Fear will make you run faster than you ever thought you can run. Fear will make you climb something you never thought you could climb, right? So you better wake up in the most normal way possible, afraid every morning that you could lose this race if you don't do the right things every day. So that's definitely a big lesson, but certainly having gone through it once before, knowing what to expect, knowing what's coming up, having a better idea of what A, B, C, and D are going to be. Sometimes I think about myself starting my campaign back in 2019, thinking, how the heck did you do it? How did you know what was going to happen? How did you do it not knowing, what was ahead? So certainly teaching me a lot about knowing what to expect. And, on a smaller scale, here we go again, feeling a responsibility in my mind. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues who are running with me this year for other races who are first-time candidates, feeling a responsibility to make sure that I can impart on them every ounce of wisdom I gained running in 2019 to help them maybe avoid some of the mistakes in their first campaign.
You are using your experience to lead other new candidates,
To the
always
best of my
coaching.
ability.
Yes. So, can you now tell us the lessons you've learned as a coach and as a
Mhm.
trial lawyer? How any of those lessons or qualities or skills will be applicable to your work on the bench?
Yeah. So, one thing I have a tremendous belief in when it comes to a courtroom is, uh, there are so many people, so many players in a courtroom, just like in a basketball court, just like in a basketball game, because people think a basketball game or any game, football, baseball, whatever it might be, soccer, it's not just the players. There's coaches, there's referees, there's scorekeepers, there's timekeepers, there's parents of the kids. There's so many people there that make this game happen. And there's so many people who can be affected by how a game turns out or how a coach makes a decision. And I'm telling you, it's the same way in a courtroom. It's not just plaintiff and defendant. I mean, there's the judge, there are the defense attorneys, there's the plaintiffs or the prosecutors, there is the defendant, there are witnesses, there are victims, there are court reporters, and there are clerks, and there are families of all of these people. And it's something that you need to keep in mind when you're a judge, that you have a responsibility that the decisions you make are going to affect the lives of people in this courtroom, and not just the defendant or not just the plaintiff, victims, witnesses, relatives. the families and children of the people that are in this courtroom, right? So, keeping a perspective on how important your job is, how important it is to look at every single case individually and strive to the best of your ability to be as fair and honest as you can be in every single case, to apply the law equally to every single person, no matter where they were born, the color of their skin, how much money they have, are they men, are they women? Every single person gets treated fairly, with dignity, with respect, that every single case is well thought through, and that your decisions are sound and anchored in evidence and fact and law, because it's not just a conveyor belt of you are convicted of this and you get this punishment. You are found civilly, you've been found negligent, so this is going to be. It's not a conveyor belt. These are real people with real lives and with people at home who depend on them. So you have a responsibility to give every single person that walks into your courtroom your full attention, respect, compassion, and effort to understand and make the right decisions.
Thank you. What do you want the people to remember about you? The qualities you want them to remember when they go to the polls?
Yeah.
When they think of Bill, what do you want them to think about?
Well, I will say this. First of all, I want you to know that I'm a person who cares about my job, who strives to do the best job I can possibly do every day. I'm going to put my hard hat on. I'm going to put my uniform on. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to work. We don't mail days in where I come from. Okay. If I'm fortunate enough to get elected, I'm going to be somebody who is going to apply the law fairly across the board, who's going to value professionalism, treating people with dignity and respect. It's my biggest pet peeve. Judges have pet peeves. Maybe it's what you're wearing, wardrobe. They want everybody to be in a suit. Maybe it's timeliness. Everybody has that. Mine is treating people with dignity and respect and professionalism. We can disagree. We can be mad at each other. We could be upset. We could be in a trial, banging heads the whole time. But I expect everybody to be professional, courteous, and treat folks with dignity and respect. And I have to do the same thing too. The coach sets the tone at practice. The leader sets the tone for the team. The judge sets the tone for the courtroom, that everybody's going to treat everybody right. And then I want folks to know this, okay? I've practiced in the courtrooms of Franklin County for 17 years. Municipal court, environmental court, common pleas court, 10th District Court of Appeals, U.S. District Court, 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. I've been a courtroom attorney for 17 years. Again, just like in 2019, this year I've gotten every single endorsement in this race. Teachers, police, firemen, labor unions. Perhaps what I'm most proud of, the Columbus Bar Association gave me a 5-star out of 5 rating. The Columbus Bar preference poll, where attorneys vote for what attorney what candidate they'd like to see win the race. I got a 73.6% of the vote. I tell you that because I want folks to know that the people I've practiced with for 17 years, against, in front of, these folks have put their faith in me to be the next judge of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. And I hope you will too on November 8th or at early vote over at 1700 Morse Road. I promise you an effort, a work ethic, and an understanding for the importance of the cases and how they affect the people who are in those courtrooms. You're going to get that every day from me.
Wow, that was deep. Can you tell us what it means to you to come on this show to talk to the community?
Yeah. I love talking to the community, and to be honest with you, I've really enjoyed speaking with you today, Emmanuel. It's been great. When you engage in a life of politics, and I know folks don't always think of judges as politicians, and a lot of them aren't, because a lot are appointed. But the truth is, our state level, our common pleas court judges, our county level, I should say, judges, we're elected. When you put yourself in this world, you need to understand that my boss is the voters. That's my boss. They choose every 6 years whether or not I get a job. They're going to choose in about 12 days whether or not I get this job, right? You have a responsibility to the community to be available, to be in the open, and to speak with folks in your community whenever they need you or want you. Everybody in the community here in Franklin County, we owe that to folks in our community to be transparent, to be available, to be willing to speak on any subject, even when it's not always a pleasant subject. All right, because the community is, we are here to serve the community. The community is our boss, and we better respond and make sure that we are available and communicative. You know, I don't like people, politicians, judges who hide the ball. You know, I am going to tell folks what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what I'm thinking in my mind that's brought me to that conclusion. And guess what? Sometimes I'll be wrong, but I promise you, I am going to work hard and I am going to listen. And this is part of listening, not just talking, but listening. I want to hear what people think. I want to hear what people have to say. And I want to make sure that if I'm fortunate enough to get this job, I'm doing things the right way and I'm serving my community in the right way, in a way that they can be proud of. So forums like this is the reason, you know, you go into politics, to communicate with folks and make folks understand your government officials. We're here. We're decent people. We're good people. We're just like you in many ways. We want to talk to you, communicate with you, and make sure you know who we are, so that when you go to that ballot box and hopefully you vote for Bill Sperlazza for judge, it's not just a name on a piece of paper. It's a man that you've spoken to and heard and you've learned something about.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on Legal Angle and to answer all these questions. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting up with me being in my car. I'm off to my next political engagement. And I just ask your viewers, please vote for Bill Sperlazza on November 8th. That's Sperlazza with 2 Z's, Sperlazza. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for thank you again. And for those of you watching us at home or listening to this in your car or as a podcast on your phone, thank you for your time. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.